Hello, subscribers and your Jemimas.
Nailed it.
Yeah, that was all pre-scripted. Welcome back to Valverde Broadcasting and another exciting, enticing, and ball-tinglingly amazing episode of Pitches League.
The show that's name has not changed.
The show that
And the hosts remember.
Yes, clearly. Bitches leave. I'm back again with my illustrious co-host and inventor of the electric cheese, Mr. Richard Jackson.
Yeah, still never patented it like a fool. Now everyone's running around with electric cheese.
Yeah, now you've got Trump's electric cheese. You must feel like a right fool. And I am, of course, Duncan Casey, actor of stage and screen, but mainly screen and sometimes television and occasionally internet stuff like this. Today's Pitches Leave episode is going to be one that I think we've probably all thought about a lot, and one that's come up a lot. And some of this discussion is probably going to be stuff from days gone by that I've had on the internet, but it's not something that you and I have ever come together. So. No. Today's topic of discussion is to pitch an alternate Superman Returns. But the way I'm teeing this up more is because I know that was one of those...
But it's a sequel to Superman Returns, isn't it? Or is it an alternate Superman Returns?
Oh, I thought it was going to be an alternate Superman Returns.
Ooh.
But we could make it a sequel to Superman
Well,
Returns.
I thought it was a sequel to Superman Returns.
Oh, yeah, well then we can do that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
All right, good.
It's all pre-planned.
Excellent. This is all totally, yeah.
It's all fine. Well, in that case then, because what I was going to talk about is how one of my things was going to be about how it should be rejigged to actually be a sequel to Superman 4.
Oh, instead of Superman 2.
Yeah, but that's okay. We can go with this. One of the interesting things kind of about all that is that there was actually a sequel planned that various details of which...
Weren't they going to call it Man of Steel as well?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was going to be called Man of Steel, I guess, to be kind of in line with the whole Dark Knight thing.
Yeah.
And it was going to involve... Some of it actually was quite well thought out in terms of... Because one of the sticking points of Superman Returns is Jason, right? His son. And how the hell you go forward with that and make it into anything interesting.
And it's something the comics have now done.
Really?
There's like Jonathan Kent, like little kid. Yeah, he hangs out with Damian Wayne. So it's not the same character, but they've done basically the same thing. Like he has a half-human kid with Lois.
Right, okay.
And stuff.
Well, I mean... So I think what was originally pitched, or what was originally going to be the premise of the sequel, was going to involve Brainiac. And it was going to be that Brainiac came to Earth, but he came to Earth as this sort of... I think at one point a lot of the concept art, or some of the concept stuff that was done for it, was going to be as Jude Law. And he was going to come to Earth as this sort of almost messianic figure of this guy who just shows up and basically works his way up through society, kind of a la Lex Luthor. To the point where he's sort of this mega philanthropist that kind of comes out of nowhere, and people wonder like how the hell he rose so fast to prominence. But then he starts doing things like curing cancer
and being green
and being amazing. No, he's not green, but he looks like a human. And being amazing and just generally solving all the world's problems. Sorry, everyone, if you can hear, but I'm having
the windows are being cleaned.
My window
cleaners. Just give us some good graces on this one.
Yeah.
These windows are filthy.
Yeah, they're filthy.
They're filthy.
Covered in shite. But we're using water to get rid of it later on.
It comes back to Father Ted.
Anyway, yeah. So the idea was he turned up and he started making the world, like he started eradicating problems in the world that Superman couldn't. Like obviously Superman was never able to cure. Like
Superman looked like a church.
Yeah, and then also it was like he was solving war. He was like had the answers to everything. But what I think it's what Superman realizes, and I can't remember how this comes about, but he finds this ship that's just sort of sat in orbit somewhere around Earth that seems dormant, goes in, investigates, finds out basically that this is Brainiac, and that what he does is he goes to civilizations, makes them the best they can be, and then destroys them so that he can take... Because he collects, like...
he kind of has like a menagerie in his ship, in his big skull ship.
So I think the idea is for him to get the two best specimens he can from each thing, and then... So the idea is to make the world... And one of the things that Brainiac needs in order to... Well, one of the things he targets is Jason, because Jason is... I mean, obviously Superman is Superman, but Brainiac knows he's a Kryptonian. But his son is an offshoot of... Kryptonian.
I suppose it's a new species.
It's a new species, and he uses Jason to... I think there was a plot about how he basically ends up capturing Jason and becoming one with him in a really nasty, horrible way, and Superman has to fight essentially his own son and ends up killing him.
Right.
So that was an interesting pitch and an interesting way to go.
It's very fucking 2000s because it's still like, I say this about Man of Steel, but Superman Returns is guilty of it as well. It's like everybody's ashamed to make the kind of wacky Silver Age Superman film, or at least they were, and something that we've come back on this now because things like Infinity War and Guardians of the Galaxy are big crazy Silver Age nuts things, and what typifies that is that Brainiac's Jude Law, and Brainiac looks like a guy. That fucks me off, like because they did that. Didn't they do it at Smallville? Wasn't it like Jason Masters or someone? Brainiac, it's just like a guy.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I think the idea is not to have him that way through the whole thing, but like that's his disguise essentially on Earth is to look like a human. And
so I feel that's just to make it more palatable for your 2000s. What I want. Okay, so
he turns into the green thing at the ultimately
he
becomes that.
He better.
Yeah, so he becomes that, and also like because there was a thing in the comics, wasn't he, that he merged with Lex Luthor,
the Brainiac Luthor team. It's funny you mentioned the thing with Jason because it's really really gruesome in for Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, the Alan Moore one.
Okay.
In the Brainiac ends up kind of possessing Luthor by the head of Brainiac kind of bonds with his head and takes control of him, and then I can't remember who. Someone, I think Wonder Woman maybe breaks his neck. And then Brainiac is controlling Luthor's corpse as a kind of animated puppet. It's fucking gross.
Jesus.
See, it'd be quite nice to have something gruesome like that, I suppose.
The animated series did it. Do you remember there was a bit because Lex Luthor didn't realise he was dying inside him, but he'd been influencing him over the time. And then eventually there's that bit where it just bursts out of him, and it was like all these bits start coming out of Luthor and all this, and he's literally ripped apart into this horrible.
It's like the Lexiac thing. Well, see, my idea is this, right? Like, and I've got a similar feeling about Green Lantern, and I'm sure if they look back now in retrospect they probably wish they might have done this, but I think even though the Green Lantern sucked, they should have used it as a jumping off point for the universe anyway, played it down, and then have Hal Jordan come back in Justice League 5 years later or whatever. Superman Returns didn't suck. I mean, they were straight up talking, I mean, in terms of its financial returns and critical reception and stuff, it's a bit lukewarm, but it made money. And they just went, and they went obviously quite far with the sequel. My thing is to kind of about face it, keep Brandon Routh, keep all those story elements there, but just go nuts with it. Like properly have like Luthor kind of getting in cahoots with Brainiac and kind of Metallo or Mr.
Mixis-Pidlick or whatever.
There you go. Like bring in all this kind of crazy Silver Age stuff, and don't be afraid to make it this big. Because even Man of Steel, like as we discussed before I comment, it's kind of laudable that I think the stuff they did with Zod, I understood his motivations and they were clear, and he had a very clear character arc.
Yeah.
Right, but ultimately it is just fucking Zod again.
Yeah.
Like, go mental. I always want to go nuts. Like, they had the money and they could have gone nuts. And what do we end up with? It's like that kind of Steppenwolf thing. Like, I'm not really sure I've got a pitch here. I just want a huge, nuts, Silver Age Superman Returns.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was scope for that aesthetic as well, because even though one of the criticisms of Returns is that they kind of dulled down the... And I know there was a lot of jiggery-pokery with the colour palette after the event.
The brown cape. And
but even though they had put that veneer on it, it's like there still seemed like there was scope to make it bright and poppy. Like he still had the pants on, for God's sake. It's like he still looked kind of like Superman. So I think, and his character still seemed quite intact as that character. So there was still definitely scope to do all that stuff, and it would have been nice to sort of have a... I think the trouble is where they leave Superman at the end of Superman Returns. It's a bit rocky, and it's a bit... He's questionable as a character. It also doesn't help. See, this is why I thought pitching an alternate Superman Returns was a good idea. Maybe we can do a bit of that as well, because some of the things I really don't like about the way, tying it to Superman 2 is all well and good because you go, well, yeah, because that's the best one. But but story-wise, it doesn't make sense. Like how we leave Superman at the end of Superman 2 is that he literally puts the top back on the White House, flag and all, and goes, "Don't worry, I won't let you down again."
And then he fucks off.
And then if this is to be believed timeline-wise, he must have literally turned around the next day and buggered off to try and find Krypton.
Well, knocked up Lois. He wiped his dick on the curtains. Well, because
the implication is that he'd knocked her up when they were in the Fortress of Solitude and they had sex. Yeah. So it's like and in order for her to not realise she's pregnant. It can only be 3 months after that he must have sodded off
at the maximum, yeah.
And then she has to have gotten with Richard in time for him to think it's his kid. So it's like this all has to happen. Like
it's all gone Jeremy Kyle as shit, hasn't it?
Yeah. And it's like it's not a good place to put any of those characters when you really think about it.
It's something that's been bandied around a lot, like this RoboCop thing and this proposed alien thing and stuff like that, where you just ignore a couple of things and bring back the one you want. And they've done it. They've done it here, and it's such an odd sell at sort of that level. To sort of just be like, well, this is a mega bucks, multi-million-dollar movie. Oh, by the way, general audiences, it's a sequel to Superman 2, that film that came out 25 years ago, as it was at the time.
Yeah. It's almost like they want to do that just so that they can go, yeah, we acknowledge that those are the cool ones. It's like, but if you thought about it, you could have made it a sequel to 4. Bearing in mind that they change everything about it. Anyway.
I think your idea's better. I want to hear this.
They change everything about the thing anyway, so it doesn't feel any of it feel familiar. Like it's sort of like Brandon Routh.
Because they went out of their way to find Brandon Routh because he's kind of like Christopher Reeve, and it's like, but then you've got Frank Langella, and it's a completely different Daily Planet, and Lois Lane's 12.
It's very much the sort of golden age, like the Daily Planet is the big globe on the top of it.
Well, that's the thing, because it wants to be a sequel to Superman 2, but aesthetically it ignores it on quite a lot of levels, because it's got that kind of thing. I think they had one eye on. One of my kind of things with the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films is that they are 1960s. They're Silver Age Spider-Man made through the lens of 1960s Hollywood.
Right.
And they have that kind of slightly gold-sheened sort of classical aesthetic. And it's slightly kind of Art Deco-y and stuff like that. And
sure.
Not as, something like Batman's really kind of gothic, but it's a bit more Art Deco. Superman Returns has an eye on that as well, and it's got a kind of bit of 50s and 60s futurism in it with the kind of designs and stuff. But like that's not what we in the Richard Donner Superman films. It's kind of vaguely brutalist 1970s square. Like the Daily Planet's like a shithole, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very much New York, isn't it? It's just very much
they even fucking put this. I hate when they put the Statue of Liberty in. Yeah, it's just like, dude, like what? And it's like, oh yeah, but it's in Metropolis. It's like, no, it's not. It's the Statue of Liberty. It's in New York. It's just like, what are you saying? Like, what's that supposed to mean?
Yeah, it is weird, and I do think that I think an audience is going to go with you much more as well if you say like this is a sequel to Superman. I mean, I suppose the trouble is you've recast with very young actors. And at the end of Superman 4, it's quite clear that Superman is older. He's moved on. Like Lois is older. It's kind of I get it. They're at a different place, and it's hard to then reconcile that. But I think there's just so much. There'd be so many fewer questions to ask. It's just I suppose it's this thing of they wanted to have Jason in it. They wanted to have this idea that he's fathered a son irresponsibly and. But then none of that's Superman, is it? And then for Superman to just rock up and fucking like spy on her through.
Well, he's kind of like a mopey emo stalker, isn't he?
Yeah, and it's like, don't get me wrong, like there's certain things about that are an interesting place to put the character and to make him feel like he's in a world that doesn't. He's just out of place now, and he's not required anymore. And that's there's a jumping off point. That is one of the things like you can imagine it in the writers' room. They go, well, the problem we have is it just doesn't feel relevant anymore. Oh, let's make that the story.
Right?
He's not relevant, and it's kind of
do a big old line of coke and slap themselves on the back.
Let's have a bump and a get out of here.
Get your front door, okay? I've got an idea.
I don't need a front door key anymore since I discovered that shooting the lock lets me in. There's
a reference to last week's episode.
Yeah, it did. I think there's it's so out of whack with what and I've said this before, but I think my biggest criticism of it is like if you are a sequel to it, right? If you're going to say like this is the new Superman 3 effectively, then jump in with both feet and make it that, but recreate that world. Don't just go like, oh, it's a sequel to that, but only because like those are the events that have led here.
It's having your cake and eating it, isn't it?
And
it's just like, oh yeah, we've moved to a new office and everyone's got a different face, and suddenly there are mobile phones.
And the 50s are cool again or something. Like everyone, Art Deco. We've redone the whole city because this is cool.
Porridge of shit.
Like, well, and that's the problem. And it's sort of like and it keeps that. It's almost like it just wants to. It starts out. It's got the Williams theme. It's got the same sort of rush through the cosmos, thing.
Yeah.
Over the credits.
Fucking zombie Marlon Brando.
It's got all the like the credits all done the same. It's all very much like this is that universe. But then the main body of the film really isn't. It introduces itself as that, but then proceeds to not be.
And also, you and I know. that Superman 3 is wicked and you shouldn't be replacing it anyway.
I agree. I'm a big fan of Superman.
We're fans. We did a whole live show about it. We care for Superman 3. Well, all right, I want the modern sequel to Superman 4 because I'm insistent that it includes acknowledgement of those events.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, they need to, like, all the worst bits. I think Watson or you just kind of like, Nuclear Man happened. Like,
Superman is in a much more interesting place, arguably, at the end of 4 than he is at the end of 2. At the end of 2, I mean, in some ways they're sort of similar, but at the end of 2, yeah, right, he's learned, like, he can't. I mean, it is an interesting place to have him. But at the end of 4, don't forget he's had all that as well, but he's also in a position where it's like he's just put Lex in jail. Right, he's just brought Lex back to jail. He's just fought a nuclear version of himself. I know it's all stupid, but it's like if you could like literally turn around and say like, you know, and reference it in an almost tongue-in-cheek way, but be like, you know, like there's he has to go to meet Luthor in jail or something like that. I mean, the trouble, the territory. One thing it didn't do it enough, but one thing I think that was laudable for Superman Returns is the way they treat Lex Luthor is that they tried to bridge the old, you know, he's just a mad genius scientist who sits underground, to the tycoon thing by, I mean, it's gross, but like kind of that he bummed a granny and basically got
bummed, specifically bummed, straight to the top shelf.
Well, she says there's that horrible bit in it where she goes like, "You show me pleasures I could never have imagined." It's like that's bumming. What else would it be? It wouldn't be like
she was senile, so he kept saying it's his birthday.
Yeah. Oh, good already.
Disgraced actor Kevin Spacey
and Duncan Casey.
Well, I was going to finish that sentence by saying having anal sex with an octogenarian, so I'm not going to include you in that unless you want me to.
No,
You're a married man. I don't think it's very responsible.
It's probably not appropriate.
And a stomach churning image for everyone at home. So far we've not really pitched anything. We've just touched on anal sex with pensioners.
Well, we touched on what is, I suppose, and what was planned, and so I suppose to come back to the main thrust of the show, or to, in terms of a sequel to Superman Returns, to take Superman from that point and that point that he's left at, I think you need to deal with Jason somehow, and I think the way they're going to,
that's the only interesting game changer they bring in.
Is it interesting?
Well, no, relative to the rest of the story, right. It's the only kind of, and at least it's something that Superman, you know, they've done it now in the comics, but it's something that Superman skirted around for ages, and they've done it in and again, reference back to Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. That depicts Lois and Clark having a kid, right? It's like a little baby and stuff like that, and it's something they've skirted around. And I think, you know, like all those crazy fucking imaginary stories from the Silver Age where it's like, what if Superman was a violin? Like, in among that, sure, it must be the super baby. It'd be called like the Age of the Super Babies, or you know, whatever.
For sure.
But it's something they've skirted around for ages, and that film actually did it. And they even show him like lift a piano, because I quite like that he's depicted as being ill. Because he's not, but then it turns out he's just waiting. I guess he's waiting to hit puberty and become super. Because he lifts the piano.
Well, it ties into, because don't forget the flashback we have of Clark Kent on the farm is him. It doesn't add up, because obviously when you again go back to Superman, the first Superman movie, he's not walking around with glasses on, but in that flashback he's running around with glasses in the cornfield, and then that's when he learns he can fly at that point, and it's at that point then he loses his glasses and realises he doesn't need them anymore. Because it's like his powers have just suddenly come to fruition, and so you imagine that's, I guess, what's happening. He's a sickly kid, possibly because he's
a mutant.
It's sort
chimera.
It's sort of touched upon in Man of Steel as well, but this idea that he had to adjust to the atmosphere on Earth, and you know, there's things about his physiology that's going to make him sick and stuff like that. You know, that sort of thing works quite well, I think. But I suppose in terms of working out where to go with it, I think I would probably use largely their idea for the sequel. I would definitely have Brainiac in. It frustrates me that there was yet another pitch for Brainiac, because that was supposed to happen with Superman 3.
And Tim Burton's Superman as well had Brainiac.
Yeah. All these pitches are supposed to have Brainiac, and they never do.
Why'd they hate Brainiac? Brainiac's cool. Brainiac's a cool image, like the kind of skull ship. Yep. And when Brainiac is depicted as having that skull as his own head, but now they like to show the green guy with the 3 dots on his head and stuff like that. There's Brainiac 5 from the Tomorrow League or whatever they're called, like, you know, that's like a good Brainiac. So if you want to go super nuts time traveler, you could do that. I like the idea that Brainiac, I think what would draw Brainiac to Earth is like, he's probably, you know, he shrank Kandor, so he's got Kryptonians, right? And he wants Earth, but there's this new, because he's a collector of things, there's this new creature, this human Kryptonian hybrid, and that's he gets wind of it, and that's what draws him to Earth.
Right.
And that's why and he would not be like sexy actor guy. He would be, because he's so ridiculously powerful, he would be disgusting space freak robot.
No, he again, in that, as I understand,
he became that, but I would have that from the get go.
In order to infiltrate Earth, he had to portray himself.
Because it's sort of like if imagine if half of Infinity War, fucking Thanos was played by Harry Styles, and then he goes and takes a mask.
Well, I like the idea that like Brainiac can send, like, because again, there's precedence for this in the comics and the cartoons and stuff. Is the idea that he can implant himself biologically in people? So it's like it's almost like not that he is Jude Law, but that like Jude Law's some guy walking around and he can, I don't know, shoot a chip into him or something like that. That effectively means he can govern, a bit like End of Days, really. With
yeah. So I'm not into the. I think there's been too much subtlety in a post Batman vs Superman world. It's a strange thing to say, but I think there's been too much subtlety in Superman. I want a giant spaceship coming to Earth.
Well, I suppose no, and I want that as well, and I suppose that's what ultimately would happen. But I suppose in terms of a first act, I would say that is where you've got this happening, and it's like, and you've also then got conflict for Clark because he's probably maybe that's how the first Brainiac Clark thing happens. He's a reporter at the thing, and then Brainiac's like knows he's not human and attacks him, or I don't know. There's lots of scope for.
Do you know who would? Okay. I know. Do you know who would help Clark Kent find out that it's Brainiac? Who I would have? Which DC character I would have?
I'm trying to think.
The world's greatest detective.
Okay, Batman.
Detective Chimp.
Right.
I'd have Detective Chimp played by a CGI Roddy McDowall from Planet of the Apes. In the Sherlock, Detective Chimp wears the Sherlock Holmes stuff and has the pipe.
Okay.
No. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Oh my god, you never seen Detective Chimp?
No.
Seriously, yeah. I'm not making this up. In DC Comics, there's a character called Detective Chimp, which is a chimpanzee in the Sherlock Holmes outfit with a pipe.
Okay.
I'm not making that up.
No, that's fine.
So I want Detective Chimp.
You want Detective
played
Chimp.
by CGI Roddy McDowall.
Thing is, in that context, that modern context, it would have to be like his name is Detective Shimp, and he's a person who just happens to be
played by an
hairy
underwear model, and like he's just got a bit of hair on him. And it's kind of like, well, my parents were half chimp and they were killed in a plane crash. And everyone I love and it's close to me dies. It's like, no, it's a chimp. It's a chimp. It's a chimp in a Sherlock Holmes suit. He helps Clark Kent. And also they have to fight Gorilla Grodd. I'm going to go full Silver Age nutbags. Get, what is it, Ace the Super Horse or whatever? No, Ace the Bat Hound. I can't remember what the horse is called. Get the horse in.
Yeah, I can't remember now.
The horse wants to fuck Supergirl. That's canon. True story. True. Also, Crypto.
Okay. Yeah, Crypto. Get that.
In all seriousness, I'm not going that Silver Age, but I would like to go nuts. I want to do a big kind of. I would do it as a big kind of 1950s or 60s B-movie invasion thing, where Superman gets to be Superman instead of just perving on his ex through a window.
The thing I would, I suppose, and this is in hindsight now, so it's probably not at the in 2006, there wasn't really this overabundance of big alien. I mean, there were alien attack movies, but there wasn't this in superhero films. There wasn't this overplayed thing of like big ship hovering above city, destroys city.
Yeah, now it's overdone.
I
suppose that's the problem with mine, isn't it? Now it's overdone. If we were releasing this in 2009,
but talking about in the context of the time and the film itself, like I think that's the way you essentially retool what was Man of Steel. Like, I would probably have the opening on Krypton to explain Brainiac as well. I'd probably have that, like, because that was part of the animated series. Because sometimes
the animated series, he's the AI from Krypton, isn't he?
Yeah, he was the AI that ran Krypton, and he almost in a sort of Terminator move, he was ultimately responsible for destroying Krypton.
I just showed Duncan a picture of Detective Chimp.
There he is.
He wondered why I was on my phone. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so...
Yeah, so some Krypton back... Well, it's funny, because the Superman, if you wanted to do the kind of backstory thing, because, Superman... Which Superman film opens with the Kryptonian exiles when they're sent to the Phantom Zone? Is it the first one, and it's played off in the second one? Yeah. So you've got that kind of... And Superman stuff likes to do Krypton flashback.
Yeah.
Now, I watched the first episode of Krypton on Sunday night.
Any good?
It's alright. It was weird.
It doesn't look my...
Colin Salmon is Zod. I like Colin Salmon.
I like Colin Salmon.
I haven't seen him as Zod yet.
Okay.
But and they're so definitely setting up Brainiac as well.
Oh, okay.
But yeah.
Colin Salmon said he knew who I was once to a friend of mine, but I think that's just because he was being nice to my friend. He said, like, oh, my mate Duncan Casey's an actor, and he went, oh yeah, I know him, but I think he was just trying to be nice.
Just being nice.
Just playing up.
If you're listening, Colin, which is definitely true. Now you definitely know Duncan.
Yeah. Well, I love you, Colin. You're great. You're amazing. Love your work. Big fan. But I don't think we've ever met. But hey, there's still time.
Thanks, General Zod.
Thanks, General Zod. I will kneel before you. Interesting. Yeah, no, because what I'd in order to tie in that idea of, I'd almost look back and sort of go like, the frustrating thing is you have to then look back to the Krypton of the Reeve series. You can't look to the
you have to do Crystal Krypton.
You have to do Crystal Krypton, but I like the idea. In a weird way, I'd prefer it if it was the Man of Steel one, because I like the idea that Brainiac was so involved at that level, like so much of Krypton's running and day-to-day whatever had been handed off to this AI that was embedded in everything, to the point where the whole thing of the codex and that, like, he'd put into the codex, he'd bred out of the society their kind of questioning of things, which is why
that's what leads to the destruction of Krypton.
Which is what leads to the destruction of Krypton.
Oh, we've actually had a good idea 25 minutes in.
I know, but
you did.
But like the Brainiac sort of did that, and he's responsible for all that. But the anomaly is that they had they're placing that thing of that Superman being that
he's the anomaly.
He's the anomaly because he's the genetic thing, and that's why he's sort of having.
That's neat. He bred complacent kind of he bred complacency into their very fabric.
Yeah.
Then it's kind of slow
attrition, and that's what then also speaks to this idea that he turns up and he can't. It's not like he can just turn up and by force take over a planet, because he doesn't feel like if he does that, the specimens he captures aren't going to be true representations.
So that's okay. So like the people of Kandor, who he managed to capture before things went off, but they're not necessarily as tampered with and stuff.
Yeah.
And, the Krypton's set in Kandor, which is why I'm like, dude, come on, you're setting up Brainiac.
Yeah.
And there's a mysterious, weirdly enough, a mysterious masked character has taken over the government of Krypton and is running things, and 100% is not Brainiac.
He likes triangles and dots, but it's not him.
He's not a skull for a head, he's got a pelvis.
His name's Franz Oberhauser, or what's
Mr. Black?
What's the not Khan name?
Oh God! It's
Peter
like,
Jeffries. Or
it's like John. Yeah, it's like Keith Rogers or something.
Yeah, it's John. Sorry, is it? John Bartholomew.
John Harrison, I think.
John Harrison, that's it. Yeah.
Hello, I'm not Khan.
Yeah.
Mostly because I'm fucking Benedict Cumberbatch and not Ricardo Montalban, but never mind. Two identical actors.
John Harrison, Franz Oberhauser, not Brainiac. Yeah, well, I think there's definite. What's interesting now is when I'm looking at the two, that there does seem to be a clear kind of, as is oft the case, there's a lot of what is in Man of Steel seems to be slightly diverted from what would have been a planned sequel. Well, what would have been the proposed Man of Steel.
Starting with the name, right?
Yeah, starting with the name, starting with the fact that like there's a big alien invasion at the end, which involves like that level of sort of Brainiac stuff. It's just instead of Brainiac, we've got Zod. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting that. But I think if you'd gone that scale, if you'd gone to that level, I mean, if you imagine the structure of Man of Steel, but with what we've said over it, and Brandon Routh's Superman, how cool would that be? Like, I think if you
and he was great as well.
Yeah, he was
just giving shit material, but like he was great. And the fact that he's come back, he's Ray Palmer now in those TV things that I haven't watched, and putting him in Scott Pilgrim is clearly riffing on his Superman stuff.
He's grown as an actor as well. I think he's become.
I've got loads of time for him, man. He was how old? He's probably like 25.
He was 25 when he was Superman. Yeah.
And he's supposed to, which means like Superman 1, Superman was like 19. Or something.
The interesting thing is, I think Brandon Routh was 26 actually. It's something like this, and I was always like, oh god, that's way too young. Like, Superman should be 33.
Well, if someone's returning,
well, quite. Yeah, there's that as well. But like, I always thought the idea was that Superman was like that, because he says he's 33 in Man of Steel, doesn't he? Which is the whole point, because he's supposed to be Jesus' age when blah blah.
Really, it wasn't subtle enough.
No, but I was like, wow, that's too young. And then I realised that Christopher Reeve was 24, 25 when he did it, which is he just didn't look that young.
He just looks old here.
Yeah.
But again, it's a generational thing where he just had horribly he was
cigarettes and
the example of a healthy person, and he probably just drank a pint of cream every lunch.
Well, when you see all those behind the scenes working out things when he was like working with Dave Prowse, and it's just like, that's right, eat more burgers and drink more cream and
get some lard on that bread, boy.
I'll turn you into Superman.
It's what we done after the war.
Aye. Now eat your block of cheese and pick up that.
Block of cheese. You got to eat 2 kilos of cheese a day. Wash it down with some double cream if you want to be a big strapper lad like me.
Right, and only whiskey.
Cigars full of protein, get that in, yeah? The Dave Prowse workout.
Oh dear. Well, there you go. I mean, I don't think we've really come up with much of anything on it.
There isn't even a pitch in this one.
There is a pitch of a slight idea, and I think, do you know what? I think the sort of jumping off point for that would have. I think there's somewhere in there. There's a much more compelling, interesting story to do. Whereas if you'd taken the sort of the baggage and the background of the character from Reeve Legacy and the Returns character, you could build on it rather than having to start from scratch again and da 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 da. So I think, yeah, within that, there's it. For another day, maybe we'll have to save our alternate pitch for the film itself rather than the sequel to the film. But there we are. I think we've run out of time on that one.
Well,
so,
I'm satisfied.
Good. I demand satisfaction, sir. Oh, my dick. So there we are. That's our sort of weird, half-cocked pitch for the sequel to Superman Returns. We hope
nailed it. Top content.
Yeah, 5. Well, you've got to rate my pitch.
I would give that 7 corn cobs out of 3 capes.
Nice. Very good. More than twice the amount for in the
yeah.
Very good. My cup overfloweth. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Richard, and thank you all for listening. Please subscribe, like this video. It really helps. Click on the notification bell because that's fun. I don't know why. And head on over to our Patreon page and check that out as well and see if you would be gracious enough to grease our palms with $1 a month. That would be fantastic. And thanks once again. See you soon. Bye.
Nailed it.